Hey everyone, this is Chris Like with Buddy Star Tales from the Infinity Rainbow, coming to you here with a pre-recorded Friday night, um, just weekly debrief hangout session here. And I mainly wanted to put this out to give further discussion about what's going on with the boy Liam Ramos, as well as some other immigrant kids that have been abducted and affected by the horrible Trump regime. And there's a boatload of other things I want to discuss too. But let's go ahead and get started. First of all, what you should know is today, well, let's go back just a bit. Yesterday, late yesterday, I think it was, word broke that the Trump regime, who just cannot for the life of them accept a loss because they're so thin-skinned, they announced a legal action to expedite the ending of the asylum claim that Liam Ramos and his family had. Liam and his family originally came from Ecuador, and they filed asylum, came to a port of entry, did everything the right way legally, but ICE snatched Liam and his father up anyways a couple weeks ago, and they spent several days, up to 10 days I think it was, in the Diley detention center down in Texas in utterly inhumane conditions. And then almost a week ago now, a judge granted Liam's release and that of his father. And then Liam and his dad were brought home to Minnesota by Oakland Castro, the Congress member for that area of Texas where the facility was. And everything seemed right with the world, at least for a minute, but I think all of us knew that this fight was far from over. And that's when yesterday we learned that, like I said, the Trump regime decided that they wanted to get revenge on a 5-year-old, and so they wanted to deport him out of the country. This morning, the Trump regime was able to push the trial that was originally going to happen about the family's asylum case to this morning. They just had their trial case today, when it was originally supposed to happen a month from now. So it got moved up to today, which is just crazy and unbelievable. And so I spent the whole day while I was finishing up my shift with my regular day job, which just got done here, with a knot in my stomach, because it seemed quite likely that they were going to order Liam and his family to be deported immediately. Now, I just read, though, they have not been deported yet. The case got done for the day, and the judge did not order immediate deportation, which is good news. The order that they did order, I'm just going to pick up my phone, and I'm going to bring the information for that up here. Just 1 second. Alright, welcome back. I had to pause the recording because I needed to look up some information, and I can't do two things at once on this phone, I guess, with recording video anyway. But anyways, so Liam Ramos and his family were granted something called continuance, which provides additional time for them in their case, but still, of course, continued uncertainty about what will happen next. But bottom line is, Liam Ramos and his family were not deported today. They were not deported today, so that is definitely good news in and of itself. You can at least get us through the weekend here. And it provides a huge opportunity, I say, to continue contacting our reps and giving them hell about everything going on, and continue to speak up to see if we can hopefully prevent this family from being deported. And yeah, I've been really, really struggling with this over the last 24 hours here, and it was hard to get to sleep last night thinking about what was going to happen with Liam. It entered my dreams a couple times, I think, and what I decided, though, is regardless of what happens, we have to continue on the fight and continue on honoring Liam in every way we can. The Trump regime is doing this to try to quash hope. but we can't let them take away our hope, and we can't let them control Liam's story. So on that note, I'll start writing it this Sunday. I'm going to start releasing, probably a limited thing, but a few short fiction pieces loosely based on Liam Ramos. It'll be called The Boy with the Blue Hat, and it'll just be some short, quick little fiction story telling design just to bring, to show humanity towards immigrants and kids of color. Because right now, the level of dehumanization we're seeing in this country is like on anything that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and just all the horrible false narratives, and I was just super stressed trying to figure out what I could do to try to help Liam and help the situation, and in addition to continue to raise my voice with my reps and at protests. I do have quite the writing ability, so I want to use my skills as a creator to help Liam and immigrant kids. And so I'm going to start on Sunday. I'll write up a short story that it hopefully just shows that, you know, kids like Liam deserve to be treated like any other kid, that they're full of joy and radiance, and that some stupid idiot like Trump is not going to get them down. Stuff like that, stories like that are crucially needed right now. I heard, in addition to the horrors that Liam has suffered, I heard somewhere, I don't know the child's name, but an immigrant girl committed suicide somewhere in the country over what is going on with the ICE raids and detentions. Just unbelievable. And there's other names too I wrote down that we need to call for justice. Diana Crespo is one of them. It's Crespo is how her last name is spelled. Diana is 7 years old. She was one that she needed some kind of emergency care, and her family took her to the ER, and then ICE snatched him. And they're currently still in the same ICE detainment facility concentration camp, Diley, that Liam was at. So Diane is there, and we need to call for her to be released, in addition to calling for Liam to not be deported. And another kid, I don't know the current status of this child, but because this abduction happened last year. Elizabeth Zuna Kaisaguano. I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce that. Elizabeth Zuna Kaisaguano. Last name spelled C as in cat, A-I-S as in Sam, A-G-U-A-N as in Nancy, O. She was 10 years old, and she was just getting ready to go off to school one day last year, she and her mom, and their car, like some of the others, was surrounded by ICE goons. They were abducted, taken 10,000 miles away from where they originally were, to that same Diley ICE concentration camp. So we need to stand up for all of these kids and let all of them be released. Diana Crespo, Elizabeth Zuma Casaguano, and Liam Ramos too. We need to make sure Liam is not deported. We need to fight that as hard as we can. We need more people talking about it too. And getting back to Liam real quick, you know, unfortunately, he probably, you know, if I was going to make a guess, unfortunately, I would say they probably still will be deported. The judges that are in place that will be deciding these things are the hand-picked ones by Trump, and they got rid of the ones that were ruling fairly. I mean, today was a bit of a miracle that they got this continuance thing. That was huge. But other commentators on Blue Sky have mentioned that they would have up to a month to appeal it as well, and with the appeals they could slow things down. And it would also be unclear where the Ramos family would be going if they were ordered to be deported. It might not necessarily be Ecuador where they came from. It could be another country that they could try to get asylum with. I'm not sure which country that would be, but that was another thing that was floating around as what could happen. And look, at the end of the day, Liam should be here in Minnesota, becoming an American and going back to his school and with his friends and try to heal and live a happy and healthy life. And this stupid Trump regime just won't let him be. And it's part of an overarching theme with Trump. You see in everything that he does, he can't take a loss of any kind. He just can't stand the humiliation. He can't stand the idea that we have joy and that we can have victories against him. He has the thinnest skin. He's just the fragilest ego probably in human history. But, every single example, going back to like the 2020 election, the big lie, he couldn't accept that he lost that, so he led an insurrection coup against the government on January 6, 2021, trying to overturn the election that Joe Biden won. Can't believe we're still having this conversation, because this idiot just won't accept it. And that's why he's trying to mess around with and try to either rig the upcoming 2026 midterms or prevent them from happening, because he can't take that loss, the magnitude of the loss that's undoubtedly going to be with the blue tsunami. And he can't take the idea of being impeached a third, fourth, fifth, 800 times. If you ask me, he needs to be impeached. and just everything else too. If you follow every action that he takes, it's all about trying to avoid accountability and avoid taking the loss at every turn. The same thing with the Nobel Peace Prize, and even he invaded Venezuela and kidnapped Venezuela's president, all because the opposition leader of Venezuela was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize and he didn't get it. He threatened, rather, to invade Greenland for the same reason and attacked Europe's, all upset that he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. He specifically called it, I can't remember, was it Norway that is where the country where the Nobel Peace Prizes come from? And he attacked them and said that the Peace Prize should have gone to him, so he just can't take a loss at all. He's just such a pathetic wimp. And the same thing happened with Kilmer Abrigo Garcia. They were trying, and they're still trying to deport him and keep him and his truth from seeing the light of day. And it's not just about the fact that he can't take a loss. It's something else too. Leah Greenberg of Indivisible punctuated this well in a Blue Sky post this morning regarding Liam's case being expedited to today. And I can't remember the exact quote verbatim, but basically she said, "This regime will never stop attacking and punishing people that it's already attacked." So this regime attacked Liam Ramos once, devastated and hurt him once, and then they go and punish him again for it. Same thing with the victims of the Epstein Island, the whole thing with the Epstein files, all of the victims of those horrible, horrible atrocities. The victims have been, so brave in their quest to get justice for what happened to them. And then they hear all these bullshit lies from the Trump regime that those things didn't really happen, and they're trying to punish the victims all over again. And it's just the same thing over and over again. First they hurt you, then they come back and make it hurt some more. Same thing for LGBTQ people. And that is going to bring me to another topic to talk about here in a minute. But yeah, overall, that's just one of the most insidious parts of living under this Trump regime, under fascism and authoritarianism, is that they make you, as at first they hurt you, then they come back to add insult to injury to make it hurt more, especially if in between you beat them, if you score a win against them, that really drives them mad to want to come after you. And that's one of the hardest things I think all of us, me included, are struggling to figure out how to get through. It's this whole thing for the past 10 years has been a constant of that. January 6th was another example of that. On January 5th, 2021, the day before the January 6th insurrection, there was a runoff Senate election in Georgia. And that election is what gave us Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, two Democrats in the Senate, flipping two red seats, bringing the number of senators from each party in the Senate to a tie. And with the Biden administration coming in, Kamala Harris's tiebreaker gave Democrats the majority in the Senate for the first time in forever. And we also had the House and the White House, so we had a blue trifecta. And it was a huge thing to celebrate after the first 4 dreaded death term years of Trump, that we could now have a blue trifecta and do a whole bunch of cool things with that. But then, 2 seconds later, January 6th was the insurrection, and that's just killed any sort of jubilation or celebration, obviously. I think that when I look back, and I think that really set the tone for that Trump's shadow was always going to loom large over Biden's 4 years, that we were not yet rid of Trump. And that kind of brings it to the third part. So it's first they hurt you, then they make you hurt more. And it's also about any victories that you have, they go to whatever lengths are necessary to prevent you from being able to enjoy those victories, and also to erase them, to make us suffer. And then there was a third part of that I was going to discuss. All right, I remember it. So yeah, the other part of that is, in addition to not being able to take a loss, not being able to stand any kind of loss at all, Trump also can't stay out of the spotlight. I've always known that regardless of who's running for president in 2028 on the GOP ticket, Trump is going to do, if he's still alive at that point, he's going to do everything imaginable. There we go. My phone had a weird storage issue there, so I got cut off. I had to free up some space. God, I just hate everything today. All right, so where was I? I was talking about, Trump can't help but be in the center of the spotlight, and that includes the upcoming 2028 election. And I've always known he'll find, if he's still alive, he'll find any way to try to keep himself in the center spotlight of that election, regardless of if it's him running for president again, which would be unconstitutional, or J.D. Vance or someone else. And on that note, let's not forget that actually it's unconstitutional for him to be president right now. And I don't just mean about everything that he should be impeached for. I meant that before he even took another oath of office, the Constitution mandated that he is not eligible to hold office because he committed treason. Back in 2024, the Colorado State Supreme Court ruled as such, based on the Constitution. But then the U.S. Supreme Court decided to overrule that because they don't care about the Constitution, and so Trump, therefore, was still on the ballot. But that means that he's illegitimate. We shouldn't forget that. He's an illegitimate president. And, yes, we talked about him being in the spotlight. Another thing I wanted to talk about before I forget is we're seeing, even as the GOP is losing election after election now, where they use anti-trans ads in their campaign, the damage by the far right, unfortunately, is, at least for now, has kind of been done. I follow Erin in the Morning on Substack, and there was a post she had, was it yesterday or the day before, talking about how more and more medical institutions around the country and the world are starting to capitulate to the Trump regime, including even the National Plastic Surgeons Organization and the American Medical Association released statements that were not based on actual science, but they were politically motivated decisions to abandon medically necessary care for trans youth, trans teenagers. And that was another, just like Liam Ramos, that was another gut punch to see that, just how much ground we've lost. But as Aaron states at the end of the article, trans people will continue to survive, live, and get the care they need with or without the medical institution that is in this country. That the medical institution was not built for trans people or any LGBTQ people to be able to thrive, to have what we need, but we come up with as with all marginalized communities, trans people come up with their own ways to get around the failures of the medical institution and all of the horrible legislation. And as someone who's, I'm part of the LGBTQ community as well. I'm bisexual, and I'm always a steadfast ally to the trans community. And again, so it's just so devastating to see just all of the capitulation by the institutions, by Democrats too. And I herefore promise that I will always continue to be an ally. All of my content, including my fiction work, on Buddy Star will be pro-trans, and I'm never gonna stop fighting for what is right, and need more and more people to join the fight. And I know at some point we'll get over this hump, and hopefully we'll get more understanding publicly about trans people, but it's going to be a long road, though, unfortunately, and we can't really make any progress of any sort, if you ask me, until we get the Trump regime kicked out of power for good, and Trump away from the political scene for good. So much of that hate came from him. He's been constantly pounding on the anti-trans hate for years and years. It's one of the GOP's wedge issues that they use to divide and conquer us. And speaking of bigotry and things used to divide us, there was also that disgusting, vile, horrifying social media post by Trump that featured former President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama depicted as apes. It was just sickening. And I saw Hakeem Jeffries' response to it. I thought his response was pretty on point. He was definitely very emotional about it. Chuck Schumer's response was pathetic, though. He was much more, as usual, milquetoast, and definitely didn't sound like he was willing to want to do anything about it. And we need to demand better leadership, in the Senate for the Democrats and for the House too. Usually I'm quite outraged at Hakeem Jeffries for a lot of other things too. We need to have leadership that meets the moment. But getting back to that post by Trump, he's doing that because he and the regime are very weak, and they've lost in the polling on virtually all of their issues, particularly on all of their main issues, and they were looking to throw some kind of desperate Hail Mary to try to get their base fully engaged back with them to stop the coalitions from breaking down. And so Trump turned to his old standby of racism. But it seems like even that is backfiring, as there was bipartisan condemnation and the post was even taken down. But no one should be surprised by what happened with that. Trump has been racist his whole life. Even back in the 70s with the Central Park five black teenagers that were innocent, yet were falsely accused by Trump of committing a crime. And So we need everybody to speak up out against this, as many people as possible. Those who don't speak up about it are condoning it. We need, just like with Liam Ramos, if you don't speak up about what's happening to these kids in the detainment camps, then you're complicit with it. So we need everybody to speak up about all of this. And I apologize if if this recording here seems kind of disjointed. I'm super tired from a long day of work, and I'm just trying my best here to recap the week's events. And I actually think, I know my mom needs to go run an errand out at night. We need to go pick up some meds for her, so I'm going to pause it here for now, and then later on I might come back, do another clip that I'll append to this, and so you won't notice any difference. You'll just see that come up here in a few seconds, but yeah, I will be back later. All right, we're back. It's actually been probably a few hours since I recorded the first part of this. I went and had dinner, and then I drove my mom to pick up her meds, got that all done, and yeah, so now we're just back here for another few minutes. I don't remember what I was last talking about at the end of the last part of this, but I did want to circle back once again to that young boy, Liam Ramos, and wanted to try and address something that has been heaviest on my chest since we learned that the Trump regime is trying to enact revenge on him by trying to deport him. And that nagging question deep in my chest, most nagging one of all, is that well, how do we make sure that the Trump regime doesn't get the last word on this? How do we protect Liam as much as possible? How do we make sure that his spirit and our spirits are not broken? And I have a few answers. First one is that I choose to believe, that though it may not seem like it, I believe that God is watching over this boy and his family. And I know what you're going to say. You know, it's like, why, if God was watching over them, why would these things be happening to them? And I don't understand that either, but what I do know is that he has lots of love around him, his dad and his mom. The country's been behind them. He raised almost $500,000 on GoFundMe. The family, actually, they recently chose to shut that down and prefer that donations be made to other places. That was all before this latest news about the deportation threat. Anyway, but yeah, they made quite a bit of money there from generous people all over the country who saw and heard Liam's story, and like me, their hearts went out to him. And so because of that, I believe that even though his earthly experience has been, at least in the past few weeks and perhaps going forward for some time, is going to be pretty rough, you know, I choose to believe that God's love is with him, because our love is with him. God's love is with him because our love is with him. My love is with him, your love is with him, all of ours who are fighting for this kid and his family. Our love is with him. That's not something Trump and his ilk can destroy. Because here's how this goes. Trump and them think that they can break the boy's spirit, and that they can break our spirits and end the hope that exists in the movement. But that's not how it works, and they don't understand that. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is it's only going to piss us off more. It is pissing me off more. It's going to only motivate us to fight more, to fight harder, to make the backlash bigger. And instead of wallowing in despair about what may or may not happen with Liam, his family, and their deportation status, and that of all these other kids that have been detained by ICE. That is not what keeps us down and despaired. What's going on with Liam and all of these kids is what motivates us to keep fighting, to keep in this. The kids are why we're doing this, because they're the next generation. They're precious, they're radiant, and we're going to do everything we can to fight for them. And Trump and his ilk don't understand that. And yes, in the immediate, right now, Trump is causing that boy and his family a lot of harm. I don't know how that's all going to end up, if they're going to go anywhere, or if they do, where they go. I honestly don't know, and we can't guarantee that he's going to be safe. We can't guarantee anything, not even, but we have his back. The country has his back, and his family loves him, and again, that's not something that the Trump regime can ever destroy. And because we love Liam, I know that God or whatever made this universe is with him. And then when all is said and done, Liam and all of these kids that are being horribly affected by this right now, even if we can't secure the best outcome possible for Liam and these other kids in the short term, we will damn sure build a better country and a better future in the long term, one where atrocities like this will not happen again. And we will make sure that we build a world where all kids are treated with dignity, respect, and kindness. And that is a promise. And I believe that, a kid like Liam Ramos, wherever it is in the world that he ends up being, whether it's still here in the United States or if unfortunately he has to go elsewhere, I believe that he's going to be around to see the other side of this. And when he gets older, there'll hopefully be a better world that he will be able to heal in. I choose to believe that. I have no proof, but I choose to believe it. And I choose to believe it because I know the power of love and the power of our determination. And just after seeing that kindness and love shown to him by everybody that donated to that GoFundMe, by Congressman Castro and Congresswoman Omar, who helped get Liam released and then escorted back from Texas to Minnesota. They let him play around in the cockpit of the plane. That was pretty cool. When I think of those joyous few moments that he had, I choose to believe that, this is not the end. Not for him, not for his family. It is true, I did hear on Aaron Parness's, one of his earlier Substack updates, in addition to all of this deportation stress going on, Liam is also having nightmares about his ordeal in the Dali detention camp. And, for as long as he lives, that's a trauma, tragically, that he's probably going to have to deal with. But I've seen before in life, with some family members that have had trauma like that, that it is something that, you can, even if it is with you the rest of your life, you can still find happiness, and you can find a way to still build a good life for yourself. And so I believe that is an outcome for Liam that is still likely to happen. I refuse to believe that what's going on right now, all of this shit, is the end for him. I've seen too much love and support for him to believe otherwise. So that's a long roundabout way of trying to say that there's no way that Trump and his idiots are going to win on this. No force on this earth can destroy the soul of a young boy, a young child, regardless of what happens. And they're certainly not going, and they certainly cannot, Trump and them certainly cannot ever destroy our determination or hope either, try as they might. So Liam, we've got your back, and we're going to keep fighting as hard as we can, and we're not going to let these assholes win. Alright, let's see what else I was going to talk about. I was going to mention too, when I stepped away here in between to go have dinner, my mom, sister, and I, we finished watching, there's a series of cartoons for the movie, the Disney movie Tangled, and they did there was the movie first, and then they did another shorter sequel movie of sorts that set up a 3-season long cartoon series that aired on the Disney Channel several years ago. And so we just got done watching the TV series version of that, and it was actually pretty good. I thought it'd be hard to get through because one of the main characters is voiced by Zachary Levi, an actor who betrayed us all back in 2024 when he endorsed Trump. But I actually was able to get through watching the series, and it didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. I still hate Zachary Levi, but the character that he was playing was pretty cool. Eugene Fitzherbert / Flynn Rider, and the main character of it is Rapunzel. It's basically Disney's version of Rapunzel, and one of the most striking things about this Rapunzel character was that she never ever once gave up on her friends or on anything, really. She was one of the most determined characters I've ever seen. In the last season I just watched, a character who was her best friend throughout the series named Cassandra went on a villainous evil streak, and she was pretty cruel and pretty wicked too while she was on the bad side of things. But Rapunzel never once gave up. Every act of Cassandra's cruelty, she doubled down. Rapunzel did. Rapunzel doubled down on still finding a way to redeem her, and in the end she actually did. It took until about almost the last episode. It was a pretty crazy long story arc, but it ended up working out, and that's one of the reasons why I'm coming onto the second half of the recording with that message of defiance about Liam. Is that's what Rapunzel would do. She wouldn't, let this be the end and let Trump win this battle, That's why I'm defiantly saying that, we're not going to give up on this fight, and I know that Liam's family is not going to, give up on him or on their ability to live a good life, a safe life, a free life. And so that is why I choose to believe, with the same determination that Rapunzel had on the show, that this is not the end for Liam, and that our movement for justice is only growing stronger. So check that show out. The TV show is called Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, and it's all based off of that Disney movie called Tangled. It's actually a pretty good watch. Let's see what else there was to talk about. A couple pieces of pretty good news this week. It's not really official yet. Every time I check, apparently this election is still too close to call. Over in New Jersey, one of their congressional districts, a blue district from the looks of it, they were having the Democratic primary last night, and AIPAC, a far-right dark money group from the Israel government, put a whole bunch of money into a particular candidate, and they attacked more progressive candidates. But the AIPAC-backed candidate lost. They finished first was fourth. Last I checked, they were maybe in third place, but they're not going to win. Instead, the winner will either be, I can't remember anyone's name. I have to stop the recording to go look it up, but the person that was in the lead was a very progressive, pro-Palestine candidate. I can't remember her name. And then right neck and neck with her was another guy who is a bit more centrist, but he was against the genocide in Israel, it sounds like. And AIPAC X was attacking that guy in particular, that candidate. But it turns out that whichever candidate's going to win, they're at least somewhat anti-genocide and pro-Palestine to some degree or another. So that was a pretty cool thing to see, that there's a big shift going on with voters, not just in red districts that are flipping blue with overperformance, but we could be having a 2014-like shift within the Democratic Party where it's getting more candidates with more of a fighting spirit and who are more progressive and pro-equality on policies. What I mean by 2014 is that in 2014 is really when the Republican Party started to go towards MAGA. It started with what was called the Tea Party. And in 2014, I remember hearing this on the news too, Eric Cantor, he was the number 2 guy for the Republicans in the House of Representatives at the time, and he lost his primary to another guy who was I guess he was a really disgusting Tea Party candidate. I don't remember his name or much about him, but that guy beat Eric Cantor because Eric Cantor was not far right enough. And he was also part of the establishment, Cantor was. And there were a bunch of other races that anti-establishment, pro-Tea Party, aka MAGA, candidates won for Republicans in that 2014 cycle. And that eventually paved the way, as I said, for MAGA. And it's a similar thing, not in ideology, of course, but with the Democrats, now we're seeing that we might be kicking out, hopefully, a lot of the old establishment guard and bringing in some new, fresh voices for a new generation that actually want to fight and do the work of the people. And Zoran Mamdani was one sign of that, and then this primary last night definitely was another sign of that. Another good piece of news that you probably all saw, J.D. Vance went to the Olympic opening ceremony in Italy for the Winter Games to quote-unquote represent the United States, and he got booed. And as I understand it, the booing was pretty loud, so much so that if anyone posts about it online, NBC News is censoring it. So before we go, I also wanted to talk about one other thing, which is about going forward, not just in this fight, but in our lives while all this atrocity is going on, while Liam Ramos faces deportation, while kids like Diana Crespo, 7 years old, is still locked up in that measles-ridden ICE detainment camp called Diley down in Texas. And the question I keep asking myself is, well, what would these kids want us to do? They want us to fight for them, obviously, yes, of course. But part of that means that we also need to be able to put our best foot forward to fight for them, which means that there are times when we might need to take breaks and just try to enjoy the simple things in life. I know one thing I tend to try to do is, I turned 33 years old this year, so I think back through my 3 decades of life so far and think of, the good memories I had and what my top favorite memories are in different categories, and that kind of helps keep me grounded. And I just mentioned my family and I are watching the Rapunzel Tangled cartoons. Watching shows like that is another good way to help refresh yourself for the long slog ahead. because none of us can keep the weight of the world on our shoulders. From time to time, we all have to take a step back and trust that the rest of the movement will keep the fight going forward while we rest. And another thing, too, that I tend to think about, particularly for Liam and these other kids, is that every action I take to fight back against this regime, I'm doing it in honor of them now. Every protest, every call to my reps, every article I write, every fiction chapter I write, every donation I make for political candidates, every phone bank I do to help candidates get elected. I'll probably be doing some of that later this year. Every No Kings, everything I do to get involved in this fight, I'm going to be thinking of Liam and that blue bunny hat. I'm going to be thinking of all of these kids that are being affected by the regime, by ICE. I'm going to be thinking of the beautiful state of Minnesota, a state that I've visited and vacationed to many times, that is now under siege in ways that are just so completely un-American and so unbelievable. It's just so tragic. But I'm using that as fuel, as I said. We can use that as fuel going forward to fight in honor of kids like Liam and in honor of beautiful places and communities like Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul. We fight in honor of those who died, like Renee Good, Alex Preddy, Keith Porter. We honor them with action and going forward. The last thing that I'm sure any of them would want is for us to, sit around in despair and not do anything. And so we have to do what we need to do to keep going forward, and we also need to make sure to never give up and stay in the fight as long as we can. And as I always say, and I got this is what Robert Hubble says almost every day too. Robert Hubble, who posts on Substack, he says that as long as we don't give up and we stay in the fight, we will win. The only way we would lose is if we choose to throw in the towel. And we're not going to throw in the towel because that means that we'd be okay with living under the jackboot, that we'd be okay with kids like Liam living under a jackboot, and that is unacceptable. And once again, that's something that Trump does not understand, that these atrocities only make us fight back harder. And they only fuel more of a backlash that we will use to kick them out of office and have an era of accountability and reform that will hopefully eventually lead to us being in a better place where atrocities like this do not ever happen. So thanks everyone for watching, for tuning in. This has been my Friday night Hangout recap of the week, and I will be talking with you soon. All right.